Hey everyone, good morning. I'm here with Spirent and on my favorite topic, 5G. Really going to be an informative discussion with industry insiders and experts. And I think I'm going to call this the Show Me the Money edition. How do we monetize 5G and develop new revenue streams from the operator perspective? Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing great. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Ross. And before we jump into Charles, maybe introduce yourself, Ross, and your role at Spirent. And for those few people who don't know who Spirent is, perhaps maybe introduce Spirent as well.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, everyone. So, Spirent has been in the testing and assurance business for about 3 decades. And,
Three
our
decades.
focus is
Wow.
really on helping our customers who are, the hyperscalers, network function vendors, and the carriers themselves, introduce new services and, assure them out in the network. So, my name's Ross Kassan. I'm responsible for our mobile strategy and have spent 2 decades with Spirent working with all those customers.
Fantastic. Look forward to picking your brain. Really excited for this episode. And Charles, introduce yourself, your role at Spirent, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, hi, I'm Charles Thompson. Been with Spirent for a couple years now. Spent most of my career in the assurance space, and today I have the opportunity to lead the product management team within the assurance group here at Spirent. So, spent a little over 2 decades, similar to Ross, doing assurance and working in and around these spaces of test and measure. Big passion of mine in helping organizations to manage.
Yeah, I think what we need here is some QoS on this
Yeah.
this broadband call. So why don't we come back to Charles in a second? I'll ask you, Ross. I mean, tell us, where are we with 5G? Where's the platform today? In production, and tell us about the services that are going to be enabled in the very near future with some of the advances coming in 5G.
Yeah. So, where we are today, we see most of our customers having 5G networks, typically the non standalone version. So, it's kind of engaged and connected to an LTE core. And most of our customers are working towards the standalone version. So the next generation 5G core working with the 5G radio network. And so they're at, various states of that development today. We see some carriers where they actually have that initial service and they're bringing their consumers over to that service. But really, what they're looking at is, hey, how do we monetize this investment of the network? It's not just a better, faster version of LTE. We now need to leverage the technology that we have to deliver new services. So we see a big focus on enterprise services, as well as next generation applications like AR, VR, connected car, and these types of applications in the network.
Yeah, super exciting year for 5G. And Charles, let me back to you. I think if you were on a 5G connection, you actually have better QoS than your home broadband here. But maybe you could tell us about expectations. What's the expectation, do you think, from consumers, from enterprises of 5G this year? And can we deliver?
Well, I think the expectations are sky high, right? I mean, 5G is sort of the base technology that's supposed to enable so many new capabilities that we all want to consume, so many new products from, vehicle to everything and augmented reality and all these new capabilities, enhanced TV and broadcasting and so forth. Now, the question of can we deliver is a tougher question to answer. I think the challenge that we're seeing is while these technologies work so often in the lab, as they start to migrate into the production environments, we start to see increasing issues with the actual realization of the promise behind the technology to deliver them the services. And so we're seeing so many of our customers looking at doing a multi-step staged rollout of 5G that's going to bring along with it the assurance pieces to ensure positive connectivity, positive quality of experience for the users. And to your point, I think if my provider was using assurance technology, perhaps I'd be having a slightly better connection experience here with you guys today. But I think,
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ross. I mean, how do you deliver a service level agreement that exceeds or meets at least customer expectations. Traditionally, like wireless was best effort. Traditionally Ross Wireless was as good as whatever cell you were in, but that's not
That's true.
necessarily the case today. When I'm out and about, I get pretty amazing voice and video quality. What's behind some of these advancements in assurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of assurance, it's really, how we look at the entire network as an aggregate and break it down into its subcomponents, right? We need to not only look at how the network's performing end to end, but also break down each kind of individual network domain to ensure that it's delivering its required level of service. And as you say, we are seeing services that are what I like to refer to as real time, right? So things like cloud driverless car, where the driver is actually somewhere else in the cloud over a 5G link, and the car is connected via 5G link. Something like that requires a very specific class of service. Real time applications like that are very sensitive not only to latency but jitter and changes in latency, right? You can do some code to compensate for latency, but when it becomes variable, it becomes very hard to manage. And that's where we do see, SLAs coming into the network. And this is an area where Spirent's been focused for about 2 decades with wired, Ethernet, MPLS, carrier Ethernet services. And we're now taking that technology and applying it to mobile services and looking at how we can assure those. And every time that Spirent at least has been involved in an SLA, there's the SLA agreement. We're going to meet this loss latency jitter specification, and then there's also this is how it's going to be measured, and that's really what we're focused on, is making sure that our customers, both the carriers and the end consumers of the service, have that capability of measuring those SLAs.
Fantastic. And Charles, speaking of jitter and latency, 5G is now mission critical. It's in first responders, firefighters, and police. The DoD is deploying it, healthcare organizations. This isn't about, a little video like we're doing here with content creation. SLAs are king. And are you seeing more and more clients, providers demanding SLAs of their vendors and integrators and so forth?
Well, there absolutely is increased demand around that.
I think it speaks for himself. I think the answer was yes. We need that. So, let's talk about the target requirement of 5G. Low latency has been the dream, and we're getting there, but we could do better. So how can assurance promise better latency, lower latency on a consistent basis, right? It's not just occasional best effort, but it's like 24/7. It's when your kids want to play that game on a 5G device, or when you need to do remote patient monitoring 24/7. These are key requirements. And what does that mean from the network side?
Absolutely. And I think gaming is a great first application for everybody to optimize. Obviously, it has a lot of the same characteristics as cloud driverless car, remote monitoring, sensor monitoring, but nobody really gets hurt if there is a problem with it. So I think when we look at the latency of the network, and this is an area where Spirent's been very focused. We spend a lot of time both delivering services to our customers, where we're out actually doing drive testing of their network and measuring latency, doing comparison of what happens when we put the service in the cloud versus a local zone versus a MEC location, and comparing all of those. And really what we found is a number of kind of key lessons. One is, when you're measuring latency, you need to actually emulate the application that's being used, right? So something like cloud driverless car, you've got a number of cameras in the car, and it's pushing a fair bit of data upstream, which is kind of counter to how the network was originally created. And then you have a very little bit of traffic going downstream in terms of the telemetry that's telling the car when to brake, when to turn, as an example. And it's funny because we've actually found that the downstream was a bigger problem in some scenarios, right? So you got a very small amount of traffic. And what was happening is that was getting buffered in the network in one of these examples that we found. And really being able to segment the network and understand that, hey, that particular latency was being caused by the RAN of the network, and it was actually a battery backoff algorithm that was
Wow.
supposed to be there to save battery. But what was happening is the network would effectively pause the frame that we were trying to send out for either 40 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds, and that created a very jittery traffic profile. So it's very important when you're measuring latency to actually emulate that traffic, and that's something that Spirent's develop patents around and really focus our development of our technology. And then the next thing is, again, just being able to dissect the entire network. We've heard a lot of CEOs from our carrier customers talking about sub 10 millisecond single digit latencies out to their customers from the application server. And this is really only achievable if you optimize the entire network, right from the compute that the software is running on through the mobile core into the backhaul and front haul of the network and out on the radio. All of those segments need to be optimized. And we've actually found problems across all of them, whether it be backhaul. We've even found, within a single data center, right, where we had the mobile core sitting adjacent to a MEC, mobile edge compute system, right, where these things were literally racks apart, and finding a latency of almost 2 milliseconds between those systems, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when your latency budget is 10 milliseconds, that's 20%, right? And you're talking about going across tens of meters of 25 or 100 gig fabric. That should be a nanosecond latency. So being able to really segment those things out, show all the different components of that end-to-end latency, and measure it with the intended load is going to be critical for our customers to assure that those types of services.
Fascinating. I had no idea you could dissect the network in that way. And take a look at this presentation that you put together. Back to, okay, the network stuff's exciting. And we are geeks here on this channel, but back to show me the money. Are these the all-encompassing ways that operators can really drive additional revenue streams? And you work with every operator in the world, I see. What are you and feel free to chime in, Charles. What are you seeing in terms of new revenue opportunities?
All right, we'll give Charles a second, but I think maybe I'll take that one as well. Yeah, so we definitely see our customers, increasing the number of services that they're offering. So I think, if you look at the chart, we see the uptake of fixed wireless access, really gaining. We see double-digit market share increases from multiple,
particularly in North America. I mean, I see
in the US,
offers everywhere, and they're quite aggressive in terms of
absolutely
going after that cable connection.
Yep, and as you say, we're going to have to get that for Charles, so we can fix his connection here.
At least redundancy.
And the other thing,
and in all seriousness, I mean, disaster recovery and redundancy, building resilience for small businesses, large alike. 5G is key. I mean, we've seen storms, we've seen service interruptions, we've seen, fires, wildfires, and businesses really need a way to build diversity into their network. So that's a really good use case.
Absolutely. And, up until recently, we've seen fixed wireless as, kind of a backup solution for business or even, an enterprise APN or slice on the existing network. But we're now starting to see that change where that's their primary network access, and, really starting to leverage, services from fixed wireless to custom slices, and slicing technology is just starting to happen. We see our first
Mm.
customers turning on slicing, but in the old LTE network, there was an APN technology that accomplished about the same functionality. So we're seeing that take off, and then we're also seeing a big push towards private 5G networks that are enterprise focused, and really focused on assuring really ultra low latency, ultra high capability, and really allowing use cases like Industry 4.0, where we can dynamically reconfigure the manufacturing floor without having to move fibers around, and offering a much greater SLA than Wi-Fi is capable of.
Yeah, I've seen every large campus, every large warehouse, enterprise really looking really eagerly at 5G as a way to provide better coverage with that managed service level that you can't get from Wi-Fi. So yeah, the list is pretty extensive, pretty exciting. I love enhanced video. I mean, I remember when Netflix throttled you to 480K if you're going to use it for movies back in the day. Now you can get as good as home broadband, but video streaming out on 5G. So super exciting. Um, in the enterprise, you must see clients targeting every vertical, every industry. I mentioned healthcare is really a big opportunity I see for refreshing the infrastructure, but there are many more. Right? Manufacturing,
Absolutely.
uh,
Yeah, we just talked about
transport,
manufacturing. We
logistics.
also see, folks like the energy companies making significant investments in mobile technology, as a way to monitor their networks, as a way to manage their networks, and work with their customers, and ensure that their services, should there be a problem or disaster, are quickly recovered, and they have the ability to, understand what's going on in the network. And likewise, we see the same in transportation and logistics, whether it's moving things around the country, or actually moving people in cloud driverless car or drone technology. We see a lot of exciting things happening in the network.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, how does Spirent approach the enterprise use cases? Obviously, you can't test for every enterprise. There are different conditions, different topologies, different requirements. But how do you build up that with the carrier so they can cover every kind of eventuality, use case, slice of the network, as you
Absolutely.
mentioned?
And to just counter your statement a little bit there, we actually can test every enterprise. That's one of the things that
Oh,
really
really?
got Spirent into this business.
Hmm.
We were working with a carrier, and they were talking about, hey, we've got 6,000 enterprise customers, and we're talking like large banks, alarm services companies, large content media companies, and they were, when we first started working with them, um, testing top 10, right? So top 10 out of 6,000, you still have almost 6,000 customers that you're not testing, and they had some problems where they did an upgrade, and they had an impact with some of the lower on the tier customers. And we started working with them, and they're like, we can test about one customer every 15 seconds. And we're like,
Wow.
okay, a little back of the napkin, and we're like, yep, yeah, we can do it in 15 seconds. And they're like, well, that's no better than what we do today. We're like, no, we can test all 6,000 of your customers in 15 seconds. And so they didn't believe us to begin with, so we went into a POC, and they've been happily using our solution now for many years. And we've actually got that down to 5 seconds now, where we're able to give them a snapshot of what their end-to-end performance is to all of their business customers. And so that's really Spirent's focus, is being able to always provide that test capability. And really, so we can look at different scenarios. Hey, you've just made a change in the network. We're going to test before the change. We're going to test actually during the change. And then we're going to give you the results after the change. And you can see, hey, did what I was trying to change make it better like I thought it was going to? Was it at least not worse than it was before the change? Or, hey, did I actually break something and need to revert that change? So that's a key use case for ourselves. And then monitoring KPIs like we're showing on the screen here, just looking at loss, throughput, availability, security, jitter, style, QoS. But then also, again, it's taking that intended application, whether I want to look like a vehicle or a drone, and emulating the traffic that is using and really measuring the network with that all of the time and providing that feedback is really what we focus on at Spirent to assure the service as well as the SLA.
That is amazing. Wow, my knowledge of the testing space is really out of date. Usually it's something we used to do like before a deployment, okay, did we test it? Yeah, we're after as like an afterthought. But this is a totally new approach. It's pretty incredible to see.
Yeah, we're really trying to take, kind of the best practices that we've seen from the hyperscalers, right? Where they implemented, I think Netflix calls it chaos engineering, right? Where they actually are actively causing issues and testing in the network in real time. And it's that same technology that Spirent's focused on and, really providing our customers eyes and ears throughout the network that they can use to manage the network.
Fantastic. And the networks are evolving. I mean, it's no longer 5G is no longer like a bolt on to an existing 4G network. We're getting standalone, we're getting advanced services, architectures. Already we're looking at 6G, distributed, disaggregated, like dynamic spectrum. And how far ahead do you look at Spirent into the future of these standards and the networks?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time, looking into the future, working with the standards. I think it's one of the, kind of unique things that Spirent has because we're in the test business, right? All of the network function vendors are customers of ours. So we're developing, on pace with them, which is one of the things I find super exciting about, working here at Spirent. We're always working on the latest technology. And as you say, we're really seeing a fundamental change in how these networks are run, right? You used to go to a network equipment manufacturer, you bought a piece of equipment that's, had, probably hundreds of man years of testing done on it. And now the carrier is becoming an SI, right? They're taking the compute environment and building that up, whether they're buying it directly from a compute manufacturer, they're bringing in something like, AWS or Azure or GCP, or maybe a hybrid of, build it yourself plus hyperscaler network. On top of that, you're putting a service mesh. And then on top of that, you're putting these network functions. And it just creates a lot more levels of disaggregation and layers that need to be tested and monitored for assurance. So,
yeah, the shift to virtualization alone is significant. It's important. It's the right direction for flexibility and scale and cost reduction, but it really changes everything in terms of that cloudification. So you must see a lot of those kind of new world scenarios as far as what's happening in the network.
Absolutely,
and really enables. Right? I know you're.
Yeah, absolutely. It really enables the disaggregation, right? So Open RAN, virtualization, moving the compute out to the edge of the network, so we can get to those really low latency applications. As far as moving it right into the enterprise where you're offering the service is what we're seeing. Taking off in the network, and for the assurance business. Where we used to have, similar to the network equipment manufacturers, right? Big hardware, ASIC or FPGA based systems that were tapping and probing the traffic. That model doesn't scale anymore, right? We need to be virtualized, containerized, and we need to be able to push out to the edge of the network, just like those network functions are. And also, make sure that we're not taking more compute and resource than the network functions that we're actually monitoring. So a lot of exciting transition there for us.
Yeah, big changes. And talk about continuous monitoring, because this is a new concept for a lot of us, and taking a proactive, hence active assurance approach versus like reactive.
Absolutely.
The old days of telecom.
Yeah, and this is really Spirent's focus, right? Is all about active assurance. So, to think about it as in the most basic scenario, we're actually emulating one of our, a customer out there in the network, using services. And we're putting that with the required amount of emulation necessary to inject it at all of the different interfaces in the network. So in the picture we're showing here, we've got an agent that's running over the air at the far left.
Mhm.
We've got another agent that's sitting between the CU and DU in the ORAN, as you talked about, on the F1 interface. We've got another agent sitting on the core, and then another agent sitting in the data network. And by measuring things like latency and application performance at all of these different locations, that's what allows us to create this view of the network. And so we call that continuous monitoring. And while you don't actually have to be running the test from all of these sources all of the time, we can actually, once we detect from end to end a problem, we could then go in and trigger a workflow that starts running and segmenting out the network. So what we found is, our customers choose a couple of key locations, over the air, in front of the mobile core and the backhaul, and run those, kind of 24/7, 365. But then some of the other interfaces, they'll create a workflow that will trigger based on an event that happens or a signature that gets triggered, where we'll go in and validate that the end-to-end performance is meeting its objectives.
Fantastic. Well, maybe one day those agents will be like intelligent AI bots that'll like crawl around the network, and just sort of analyze and report back autonomously. But we're not there yet, so we'll save that.
We're getting close. We have some scenarios where we autonomously will, trigger a signature and then go run a test agent. So today, most of our customers aren't fully orchestrated. Our agents are cloud functions, just like everything else in the network. So they can't be actively stood up. But most of our customers just have them in the network, not consuming any resource, kind of in a standby mode. And then when they need them, they can trigger them and run testing from them. So we're getting close, but I'd say we're halfway between closed loop and open loop right now.
Okay, got it. Well, the future is bright. And this is a pretty busy slide, but automation is everything in tech these days, particularly in telecom and mobile. So tell us, what are we looking at here? Because this is a pretty busy slide, in sort of a three-step process for troubleshooting in an automated
Absolutely.
fashion.
Right. And this process that we're showing here is from our new platform, Vantage. And really focused at showing whoever's running the network, whether it's an orchestration system or a human, what the current state of the network is in that sunburst chart that we see on the left. Giving you a quick view of all of the services that you have in the network, every node in your network and how it's behaving. And then giving you the quick ability to drill down and understand, okay, we see that one of the services is red there. What's causing that impact, and being able to drill down into a geographic view to understand, hey, is this problem associated with a specific geography in my network? And then right down to, here's the nodes and interfaces that are causing this problem in the logical diagram in the lower right, and highlighting, where those problems are, potential alternate paths. One of the things that our tools allow us to do is measure, all of the different resources in a pool. As we virtualized, functions like subscriber management are now put into a pool with lots of different compute resources. And we're actually able to kind of sit behind the load balancer and just kind of cycle through all of them, so that we know that each different function is doing its job and is ready. And waiting. If it's a standby node, we're measuring those actively as well. So we can help provide that information back to an operator. And again, that could be an open loop where it's going to a human, or it could be a closed loop where we're putting that information on a Kafka or Pulsar bus, and the orchestrator's reading that off and seeing, hey, I have a degradation in the network. I'm going to make a change in terms of how I'm routing this traffic.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like an amazing app. I can imagine a mobile version as well, where you're out in the field just on your iPhone.
Absolutely. Yeah. So run these on mobile devices all the way through to the core 400 gig interfaces on the network.
Wow, fascinating. Well, we have actually a webinar coming up that looks more like a deep dive into maximizing the potential of 5G with active assurance. So we're going to give Charles another shot or another bite at the apple here. But what is this all about? What is this event? May 30th. The link is actually in the tweet and the LinkedIn post. Ross, what is this event about?
Yeah, so we'll be Charles and I will be meeting with Jim Hodges of Heavy Reading and going a little bit deeper into this topic. We'll be doing some examples of some of the problems that we found, and really peeling the onion a couple layers deeper. In this,
we'd be doing actual demos, actual hands-on, kind of driving the platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. I think there's an ebook out as well. I see here. I did have to check that out. I didn't know there was a new piece of content around this event. Well, congratulations on all the success and powering our next generation of networks. It's always fascinating to chat with Spirent. And thanks for watching, everyone. Really insightful.
Awesome.
Look forward.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Evan.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.